My name is Navdeep Suri. I'm Distinguished Fellow at ORF and a former ambassador to the UAE. And our topic for today is the fourth industrial revolution and the future of jobs. What will the word be as the fourth IR takes hold, as the artificial intelligence spreads, as machines become more capable? What does it mean for our education systems? What does it mean for the skills programs? What does it mean for gender empowerment? Will it create a new category of digital haves and have-nots? These are profound issues, and there's a lot of thinking going on amongst policymakers to see how this will move forward. We have a wonderful panel today to discuss this, headed by my very dear friend, His Excellency Omar Al-Olama, perhaps the world's first and only Minister for Artificial Intelligence, who also handles now the remote work portfolio. We have Najla Al-Mitfa, who heads the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Center, Sanjeev Bhikchandani, who runs India's largest online jobs portal, Anna Roy, who has dealt with technology issues at India's Niti Aayog, and Dr. Amr Al-Rawas, who is not only an executive coach, but who also has a PhD in computer science and artificial intelligence. And the discussion would be moderated by the redoubtable Prashant Gulati, innovator, angel investor, mentor, and a lot more, but briefly known as PK to all. He straddles Silicon Valley and Bangalore, sitting out in Dubai. And so without further delay, I will hand over the baton to PK with just the additional comment that this conversation is for about an hour. We will have about 40 minutes of discussion with the panelists, and then about 15 minutes of questions and answers from a live audience. Over to you, PK.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Suri, and thank you very much to the distinguished panel who is with us. The fourth industrial revolution is a continuity of humans finding ways to make their lives more comfortable and to increase productive growth of mankind through the use of technical ingenuity and engineering prowess. From steam to electricity and from electricity to information technology, the first three revolutions caused a great rise in the quality of life of people, and the world has seen immense progress, economically and as a society since. The greatest learning as we go from one industrial revolution to the other is that the time it takes to move from one to the other and the time it takes for it to create measurable and substantial impact is getting shorter. Or in other words, we are moving away from linear revolutions to exponential revolutions. The impact is moving to multiple dimensions at the same time, and all effect may not be benevolent or, for that matter, predictable. The fourth industrial revolution is also different in the way it is coming in. The move from information technology revolution to the fourth industrial revolution was a mere 20 years. And a lot initially seemed incremental in terms of use of technology in making life better. But as we progress, the realization that the mashup of different types of technological advances in the physical, digital, and biological spaces has created an exceptional and unimaginable opportunity for mankind to prosper immensely. But the risk of creating a monster of inequality is also great. The introduction of robotic workforces, intelligent software, synthetic biological beings, 3D printed buildings, and many other exponential advances are not just plausible, but probably closer than most people think. As Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum and who initiated the global discussion on this fourth industrial revolution, points out, that the possibilities of billions of people connected by mobile devices with unprecedented processing power, storage capacity, and access to knowledge are unlimited. And these possibilities will be multiplied by emerging technology breakthroughs in the fields like artificial intelligence, robotics, IoT, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, materials, energy storage, and quantum computing. Already, artificial intelligence is all around us, from self-driving cars and drones to virtual assistants and software that translates for us, that invests for us. Impressive progress has been made in AI in recent years, driven by exponential increasing in computing power and by the availability of vast amount of trade. All this will undoubtedly generate fear of the unknown from a large portion of the population, which will consider itself incapable to stay in sync with the pace of growth and the knowledge upskilling that may be required in the short term. It may also place major challenges in the path of our governments on how to take everyone along as this massive change tsunami hits society. Some may be better placed than others and may have the knowledge advantage as things change, but there is a chance that many will be left behind, giving rise to inequality, and the chasm between the haves and have-nots may become larger. The risk of the job market being divided amongst the lines of low skill, low pay and high skill, high pay is exceptionally high, leading to the edges of the job market being cemented with the large middle class probably left anchorless. The fourth industrial revolution will equally affect business. While the generation of business will use the latest in technologies from all around science, we will revel in the latest method of bringing ease to our lives, like booking cabs to booking workers, buying movies or groceries, designing homes or drones, cars by the mile. Agility in thinking will make things till now unthinkable possible. A smart, more fleet-footed team would disrupt large and old companies in their own arena. Using technological reach which is multiplied by this revolution, scaling will be possible in such immense proportions and in lesser time and at far lesser cost that it will create opportunities and businesses that will dominate the world in time that would be too short to imagine. While businesses work to find ways of scaling by reducing the role of employees, the governments will be kept busy in finding ways to generate meaningful occupations for those displaced by technological advances. So it seems while we were living our lives in the last many years, a revolution quietly entered our lives. A revolution because it is as disruptive as the ones with bullets and guns that we read about, but without the violence that accompanied it. When we read about the Industrial Revolution at school, we thought of it from the outside, commenting on similar topics as we are doing today, without realizing that most of us here will probably have lived or will live through two such revolutions, the third one led by the information technology and connectivity, and the fourth one which is happening now, the one that is faster, more expansive and elaborate, the fourth industrial revolution. Today we'll talk about the various aspects of this one, its promise, the technological leaps we see, and those which are around the corner, as well as the challenges that it may put forward in front of all of us. Does the job as we know it have a future? And to speak about this, we have the best people, the practitioners and the thinkers to talk about. And who is the best person to start with? His Excellency Omar bin Sultan Al Olama, the Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence, Digital Economy and Remote Work Applications of the UAE. He was appointed the Minister of Artificial Intelligence in October 2017. His responsibilities include enhancing the government performance by investing in the latest technologies and tools of AI and applying them to various sectors. He is currently the Managing Director of the World Government Summit at the Prime Minister's Office in the Ministry of Cabinet Affairs and the Future. He has also been working as the Deputy Director of the Future to the Ministry of Cabinet Affairs and the Future in the UAE. He has extensively contributed to the preparation of the UAE Centennial 2071 strategy and the UAE's fourth industrial revolution strategy. He is also instrumental in setting up the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution under the auspices of the World Economic Forum and Dubai Future Foundation in Dubai. Your Excellency, the floor is yours. We look forward to your views.
Thank you, PK. It's an absolute pleasure being with all of you here today. There is one thing that I think we need to automate as soon as possible, which is introductions for speakers. It's going to make all our lives much better. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by expressing my solidarity to those who are suffering from the health, social, and economic impacts of COVID-19, and to the families of those who have lost their lives because of this global pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently at an inflection point. we've seen what 2025 looks like with our feet planted in 2020. And now we're presented with a question. Do we like the future we're moving towards, or do we want to modify it? The COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore the inherent cracks of our system, making apparent the increasing inequalities that our past actions have produced. These actions are neither sustainable nor resilient. It has also presented us with a silver lining, obliging us to future-proof all of our next steps to ensure that what is to come is both agile and sustainable. Much like the Gutenberg press of the 15th century that brought knowledge to the 95% of the population that had no access to wisdom that was locked in books, it created an entire new wave of jobs and industries and the like. It also intensified pre-existing notions of disparities and inequality. And today, while the world was contemplating whether one platform or another is a better platform for communication, millions of people were still thinking of how to put food on the table. The fourth industrial revolution and working and cooperating towards creating a more sustainable fourth industrial revolution is the prerequisite. And it also means that we need to not look at fourth industrial revolution on its own, but we need to look at digital accessibility and inclusiveness as the key to ensuring that the progress of technology is one that is going to create a better future for us all. The haves and have-nots of the future will transform to the impacting and the impacted of the global society. And those who are not able to leverage the technology or use it will be unfortunately impacted and will be users rather than creators of this technology. We are here writing history, not for us and our representative societies, but for the entire 7.8 billion people that live on this planet and for the generations to come. And our imperative today is that we ask ourselves three key questions. The first is, how can the fourth industrial revolution be designed to be better and create a better future for us all? In the UAE, we have been fortunate enough to be working under a visionary leader, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who has worked relentlessly over the past couple of decades to transform the UAE into a country that is in competition with no one but itself, continuously working to disrupt inwards in every step it takes. Today, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that we're living, 100% of our government services were migrated online and were delivered seamlessly. The investment of 20 years ago were reaped today under conditions no one could have foreseen. So we need to understand that future planning and empowering individuals and creating a future that is not dependent specifically on technology on its own, but dependent on the people that can shape it and that can mold it to the needs of the future and the needs of the ambiguous future that we don't know, is very important. I urge you all to think of the fourth industrial revolution not as a positive future, but as a future that includes the positive and includes challenges as well. I also urge you to look at the current pandemic to understand what is to come. The current pandemic proved to us that we are all threads in the global fabric of the world, and that an issue that starts in one country can end economies or social livelihoods in others. So we are a globalized world. We are a world that depends amongst itself to be able to thrive and continue to prosper. I have a question for all of you today. How can we share our collective best practices with the less fortunate? And how can countries that were not able to navigate the relentless waves of previous industrial revolutions thrive in the coming industrial revolution and transform itself? As Steve Jobs has once said, we cannot connect the dots looking forward, but we can connect them looking backwards. With the benefit of hindsight and with the wealth of accumulated experience that we have gone through for the many years and many revolutions in the past, we know that cooperation, consolidation, and inclusion is the key for the fourth industrial revolution. And that is why I encourage all of you to think of the human journey and the human experience and the social impact that these technologies are going to have. I'd like to conclude the speech by telling you that each and every single one of you today possesses the knowledge, the tools, and the platforms necessary to create the future. All it takes is for us to have the passion and the will. I would have loved to spend the coming hour with you in the panel today, but unfortunately, I do have other things to run to that are beyond my control. I look forward to having many more conversations and following the outcomes of this conversation, and wish you all a successful session and a safe time with yourselves and your families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for your guidance. And we will deliberate on the question that you put up at the later part of this discussion. Thank you, sir. Next, we have Ms. Anna Roy, Senior Advisor, Niti Aayog, the policy think tank of Government of India, established with the aim of achieving sustainable development goals by fostering involvement of the central and state governments in India in the policy-making process. She is an officer of the Indian Economic Service, an alumnus of Shri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi University, and Delhi School of Economics, has been a lecturer in Delhi University and TERI before joining IES. In the Niti Aayog, she looks after important sectors like infrastructure reforms, public-private partnership, financial sector, banking sector, and is also involved with all aspects of the fourth industrial revolution. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, PK. While His Excellency had to leave, I could not congratulate him in his presence, but I would like to congratulate him for raising all the right questions. And in this regard, I would like to refer to the National AI Strategy, which I was heading the team which prepared it and released it in 2018. And it is exactly with this humane and inclusive idea that we formulated the strategy, where we are not addressing the technology for what it is, for technology per se, but what it can help us achieve. I tend to have a bit of a different view from a general view on the fourth industrial revolution, also including the future of work. I feel that unlike the previous industrial revolutions, some of which PK referred to in his opening address, this one provides far more opportunities to overcome the gap between haves and have-nots. I'm a student of economics, and we have been hearing how technology development really creates this gap between the have and have-nots, and we have various theories to overcome it, whether it's the trickle-down growth or various other, other growth theories to overcome this gap and meet this gap. I feel the present cyber, physical, digital technology, which we have come to call the IR4, is something which really works in favor of countries like India, which have a huge population of have-nots and a small haves. And we are much better placed to have inclusive growth going forward, provided we get our act together. So here I would like to mention that technology, whenever it comes, is disruptive. And several decades back, Bollywood movie, which its name was Naya Daur, which showed the problems between a cart, a horse cart and a bus. So, and what was the kind of conflict between them? So, whenever technology comes, there is going to be a disruption. The present technology is supposed to be much more disruptive than past technologies, but this technology phase is also extremely kind of pervasive. It's also not really divided too much like the previous technology, so you don't have to be trained as a B.Tech or a M.Tech to really be a proponent of technology. You could be an educationist, you could be agriculturalist, it could be any sector, and you would be using this technology. Coming to manufacturing, it will have the most kind of problem because when we talk about manufacturing, if we refer to the shop floor, then of course this will be very disruptive in the sense that whatever is repetitive kind of work are bound to get taken over. But here also I think we do not appreciate that when we talk about IR4, it is how we integrate digital into the manufacturing process. And since we are not able to do it very effectively, we do not have the entire impact of this technology on the manufacturing bit, and till we appreciate the true potential of it, I think we will not know how it will really impact. It will impact, but there will be a change in the nature of jobs going forward. And then we come to this very important area of skilling, of being prepared. And it cannot happen overnight. It is a long drawn process, and that is where I say that the governments of the day need to education and democratizing access to resources, I think, is the important way going forward. If you see the national AI strategy of Niti Aayog, there we have spoken about how the infrastructure, compute is one of the major infrastructure requirements of AI. We have proposed that how we can democratize availability of the compute infrastructure going forward, and similarly access to data, access to other things, and of skilling, which helps people to overcome this gap between have and have-nots. And last but not the least is the infrastructure, the technology, so that everybody in every nook and corner of the country has the same access to the infrastructure, access to technology. Today, when we, due to the pandemic, when we have gone online in the education sector, the biggest gap which has come forward is unavailability, not only of devices, but also access to access to the data, access to the telecom facilities. So I think what we need to do is to have these very, very broad-based policies which address the question of the issue of providing greater access to the larger population. And I feel with the new technology, it is easier said, because now we are not talking about huge supercomputers which can only be placed in, say, one IIT. Now we can have a cloud compute. So it is, I feel, technology, while it gives us challenges, it is also giving us opportunities to leverage the benefits much more than the previous technology phases, and we need to kind of use those opportunities effectively by having effective and inclusive and visionary policies by the policymakers. Not only by domestic governments, we have in the AI strategy talked about a global alliance, which is more for AI for all. When we say AI for all, we mean keeping the the common man in the middle. And here again we have talked about India being the AI garage, where we have the maximum challenges, and with the challenges, that is the breeding ground for having more innovation, more development. And there we are saying that if you solve for India, you solve for almost 40 to 50% of the rest of the world, because they are facing similar challenges. So these are some of the concepts which we have propounded in the strategy document, which I keep on saying again and again, that yes, this IR4 presents us with challenges, especially future for work, but it also provides us more opportunities for us to make it a more inclusive growth going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much for a detailed input on how you are taking this forward. The next panelist is Dr. Ahmed Awad Al-Rawas. He's a consultant and executive coach and the former CEO of Governmental. Professor Rawas is an experienced transformational thought leader with specialization in technology and innovation. He served as the CEO of Governmental, the incumbent telco of Oman, amongst other executive posts in telecom and oil and gas sectors. In academia, he has served as the dean at Sultan Qaboos University, and he is currently the dean of IT and business at the New Vision University in Georgia. With a PhD in computer science and artificial intelligence from Sussex University, Dr. Awad will now share his views.
I'd like to agree with both. In fact, this is one of the rare panels where I find the same bias that I have towards embracing technology. I find that if we look at the relationship between technology, business models, and the job scene, you will find that the relationship is consequential. You have an advancement in technology, be it an evolution or transformational disruptive, that impacts the way we do business, changes the business model, and then you move on to changing the job scene. So it's actually the change in the business model and how we do business. It's not so much about the product, it's more about how we deliver a service and do a business that then changes the scene of the jobs. In line with what His Excellency Omar was talking about, which is connecting the dots, going back to history, if you look at the advent of cars, when cars came, society, specifically in Europe, was worried that it's going to take up the jobs of all the people that used to look after all those horses that were pulling the carriages. But in the end, the advent of car introduced better jobs. It brought jobs for people who are building the cars, building the wheels, supplying the fuel, and those who are, of course, driving those cars, repairing them, looking after them, the bodyworks people. So they elevated the type of jobs to, let's say, more skilled jobs and more comfortable, that gave rise to a better lifestyle and prosperity at the time. So an advancement in technology throughout our history has impacted the way we do things and therefore has changed the scene when it comes to the job scene. For the 4IR, I'm going to talk about a similar component, which is, let's look again at the car industry and how it's been disrupted, for example, by the likes of Uber. Uber is only the technology that is underlying the Uber solution has been there for a long time. However, the major change was the business model. We now can get from A to B without having a designated taxi driver. It could be anyone on the net that has subscribed to the Uber service. Therefore, that disruption has taken us one step. The next step is self-driven cars, which are a major component of the 4IR and the 5G use cases as defined by the National Telecommunications Union. When that comes, the disruption will be greater, because the supply chain of vehicles, you start from the showrooms to the salesmen and women that sell them, to the people who are financing and leasing the cars, and eventually to the owner who has to own one type of car, make a choice, to a scene where nobody has to own a car. The car owns itself, or is owned by some kind of international over-the-top conglomerate that will then supply you the car where you need it at the time that you need it. And you can have a car to go to work, another car to go for your dates or businesses, parties, and they could be different styles, and they could be basically on demand. And therefore, you can think of all the jobs that are gone in the supply chain of providing the car and the car ownership. Beyond that, after service, which provides a lot of jobs for repair, preventative maintenance, electricians, and all of those are going to be minimized, because the future of cars is going to be cars that have very few moving parts. And with fewer moving parts, fewer things can go wrong, and then you need less maintenance and less people to look after it. So the disruption is going to change the business model, and the business model is going to change the job scene.
Dr. Ahmed, thank you very much for this deep insight and analogy with the automobile sector. I would like to give a message to everybody who's watching us today that we will be doing question and answer sessions after the initial remarks. So please keep the questions coming in. You can send a question to the message chat bot, which you can see on the bottom of your screen. So keep the questions coming in. I'd like to now invite Najla Ahmed Al-Mitfa, the CEO of Sharjah Entrepreneurship Center. Najla is the CEO of Shera, a government-supported entity which was launched in 2016 with a mandate to build a tech ecosystem in Sharjah to contribute positively to the economy of the region. She is a board member of United Arab Bank and Emirates Development Bank and the vice chairperson of Young Arab Leaders. She is also a fellow of the Aspen Institute's Middle East Leadership Initiative and an Eisenhower Global Fellow. Najla also holds an MBA from the Stanford University. And Najla, a dear friend in making, and we work together in trying to build the local startup ecosystem, your perspective will be exceptionally valuable today because of your work with the younger generation and their changing views on jobs and employment. The floor is yours.
Let me just start again. Thank you very much, PK, for the introduction. Thank you, Ambassador Suri, for organizing this panel, this increasingly relevant conversation. I just want to build on the remarks that His Excellency Omar started with. He kind of gave an overview of the UAE's 4IR strategy. And I think looking at Sharjah as an example of one city and what we are doing here in Sharjah to address the fourth industrial revolution or prepare for the fourth industrial revolution might be particularly pertinent. So let me start by introducing Sharjah. Sharjah as a city has long been hailed as a beacon of the 3 C's: creativity, culture, and compassion. And of course, there's a 4th C, cricket. And since many of our audience members today hail from the Indian subcontinent, I'm sure you will know about the iconic Sharjah Cricket Stadium that has a great legacy of holding some of the most exciting international matches where many of the Indian cricketing greats wrote history. The Sharjah government has focused on equipping both the Emirates infrastructure as well as its people with the capacity to lead pioneering change. And while many may see economic development and culture as mutually exclusive, Sharjah's model of economic growth has always been deeply rooted in a commitment to human progress and prosperity based on the exchange of knowledge and ideas. To understand the value that Sharjah places on nurturing human capital, one need only visit University City, home to some of the top universities in the region, such as the American University of Sharjah and the University of Sharjah. With over 30,000 students and multidisciplinary offerings, the city is home to a critical mass of talent. However, with the advent of the fourth industrial revolution and the outlook for the future of work, there has been a recognition that it is not enough to just produce knowledge workers. Instead, we need to be at the forefront of producing 21st century skilled workers. The Emirate is well aware that we must prepare the next generation for a job market that will look drastically different from the one we know today. There is, of course, the famous statistic that 65% of children entering primary school today will end up working in jobs that don't even exist yet. The danger lies not in the fact that things are changing so fast, but in the fact that the broader institutions and systems we have in place are struggling to catch up. Sharjah's response to the fourth industrial revolution has been twofold. On the one hand, there has been a move towards transforming our current higher education institutions from teaching-based to research-based universities, thereby placing an increasing emphasis on R&D, innovation, and commercialization. In fact, the recent establishment of the Sharjah Research Technology and Innovation Park is an example of that commitment. And then on the other hand, there is also an increasing emphasis on incorporating entrepreneurial learning into the student's journey to ensure that we are empowering them with the skills that will not only make them more employable, but will enable them to ultimately create their own jobs while using technology to solve some of the most pressing challenges we face in the region and around the world. And that's where Sharaak comes in. With 2 hubs based at the leading universities and a 3rd one being established at the Research Park, we have been working closely with the education institutions in the city to complement the theoretical literacy that they are providing in important fields such as STEM with the skills to successfully apply this knowledge to build a thriving future. So what does that mean? What are these skills that we are talking about and how do we develop them? Obviously, the natural tendency is to think that because the 4th industrial revolution is based on technological advances in digitization, the skills I must be referring to are the hard skills such as coding, 3D printing, robotics, and so on. And while there is no doubt that digital fluency is no longer an option, the real skills of the future, in our view, are what are often referred to as soft skills and what we like to call life skills. This includes skills such as creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, and non-cognitive skills such as perseverance, resilience, and teamwork. Above all, we aim to inculcate a growth mindset because to keep up with the pace of change in the 4th industrial revolution, adaptability and a willingness to keep learning will be key. And if we have ever needed proof of the importance of this ability to adapt, COVID-19 has certainly delivered and hit the point home. These skills that I'm referring to can't really be taught from a textbook or in the classroom. The only way to truly learn them is to experience them. And this experience is exactly what Sharaak provides. When we say we are building an ecosystem that encourages and supports entrepreneurs, we are not just talking about starting businesses. We are talking about cultivating the entrepreneurial mindset, one that is built on the foundations of curiosity, problem solving, and a celebration of infinite possibility. Through the experience of identifying a challenge, ideating a solution, validating it, building a product, building a team, managing finances.
Let me invite another friend of mine and a dear friend, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who's the founder of InfoEdge, the investment company that owns Naukri.com, India's leading job site. It also owns 99 Acres, Jeevan Sathi, Shiksha, and has invested in some of the most promising internet startups like Zomato, Policy Bazaar, Shop Kirana, Gramophone, Shipsy, Printo, and others. A graduate from St. Stephen's College and IIM Ahmedabad, Sanjeev founded InfoEdge, and today it employs more than 4,000 people with a market cap of over $4 billion US. Honored by the prestigious Padma Shri by the Government of India, Sanjeev has contributed to, with his active participation in the leadership of TIE, All India Management Association, NASSCOM, and philanthropic initiatives like Ashoka University, Chintan, and 1947 Partition Archive. Sanjeev, we are looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the subject from your special viewpoint of watching of the worlds of jobs up close.
Thank you, PK. Thank you, Ambassador Suri, for inviting me, and PK for inviting me. So, a couple of quick comments, because before we sort of, I don't want to take too long. The first thing I want to say is, all these things that we call revolutions, whether it's the first, second, third industrial revolution, and now the fourth, typically take a few decades before their ramifications are entirely felt or widespread or permeate or go down the population, social, and income strata. So it's not as if the world will be upended in 2 years or 3 years. It may take, the legacy will survive, new stuff will come in, they will both coexist, and gradually the new stuff will increase in share. Now, I have seen this industry after industry. So I remember about 7-8 years ago, I was in a NASSCOM retreat, and McKinsey partners came in and said everything is changing because the world is digitizing, they're moving to platforms, product, and the Indian IT services industry, you have to really change everything, right? Now the truth is, growth slowed down in the old way of doing business, but business survived and it continues to grow, although not as fast as it used to. But new ways of business, new products, new services came in. And now both are coexisting. So usually when economies transition, when industries transition, there's a longish period of time when both the old and the new coexist. And this is even more so in India, in a country of 1.3 billion people, 67% live in rural India, where things change. Yes, they change, but they don't have to change as fast as they do in urban India. And therefore, we'll see India, there are several types of India which coexist. And I think that is going to continue for a while, right? So there will be parts of India which will be really impacted immediately. And there will be several parts which will be impacted after a decade or two, right? And we have to see how that goes. Now, of course, India has to adapt to it. And we already see on our website, Naukri, what's happening. Now, you've got to also separate the impact of the fourth industrial revolution and of COVID, the pandemic. And we will have to see when the pandemic recedes, when COVID is contained, when things get back to normal or the way they used to be. And let's see how fast that happens. What comes back, what doesn't come back, what has changed permanently, and so on. And how much of this is because of pandemic and how much is because of fourth industrial revolution remains to be seen. But for example, in Naukri, in the last 5 months, we have seen a 7-fold increase in work from home jobs. Now, 7-fold. Now, of course, this is probably temporary unless COVID stays for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Okay, in which case it might become permanent. But if in 3 or 6 months' time COVID recedes, things are back to normal, offices open up, we probably will be back by and large to our old method of working. Right? Now, over the last decade or so, every time a new skill comes in or a new thing happens, there is very often a fear and a panic that people think that change will hurt me. Right? It's possible change will hurt you, but it might benefit 10,000 other people. So if you look at it in the system as a whole, the country as a whole, society as a whole, the economy as a whole, it's possible the good that may come out of this may overshadow the not so good, although the people whose jobs are no longer as secure may not be the ones getting the new jobs because they don't have those skills. But India being a young country demographically, I think it will adapt easier so long as our education and training and apprenticing systems respond to the new skill requirements. Right? In 1985, I had just begun my first job. I was 22 years old. I remember computers were coming into government offices and banks, and that time there were only nationalized banks, public sector banks, for the first time. And there was this large number of newspaper articles and trade unions protesting that, listen, computers will displace people and people will lose jobs. It never happened. People learned new skills. In fact, employment went up, productivity went up. Now, it can be argued that, look, if those computers had not come in, maybe more people will be employed to cater to increasing demand, but that may not have been a good way of working. Okay, so it's not as if automation will lead to destruction of jobs. It may lead to destruction of some jobs, but it may lead to the creation of many other different kinds of jobs. Right? So to my mind, the jury's out. I would say, look, the world is dynamic. Things change. Things go up. Things go down. But it's very rarely that you see a whole jobs being demolished or being removed large scale across an industry in a very short period of time. It usually doesn't happen. So I think we have time in many places. And yes, companies need to be nimble. Companies need to be agile to adjust. And education institutions need to be agile to adjust. I'll stop here and we can move on to next speaker. PK, I can't hear you. I don't know if others can hear you.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you so much. We seem to have some gremlins in the tech system. So Najla got dropped off and we're back again. Thank you, Ben. Let's start with a round of questions, which, we want to ask the panelists to get this conversation started. And I'll start with Anna. The fourth industrial revolution presents an immense opportunity for growth of the economy for governments, while also posing a challenge of upskilling a very large and presently productive workforce so as to keep them gainfully occupied as we go forward. How will the governments of the future make sure that they are suitably balanced to make sure that this does not lead to societal challenges? And how do we prepare for the upcoming multifaceted challenge that we're talking about? Anna?
Thank you, PK, for that question. And wherever I go on this topic, this is the question I get asked, that what is the government doing? Education has always been a problem in this country. The extent, huge country with so much of diversity, access barriers, and of course, various other issues of curriculum, etc. Digital solutions to these problems are really a game changer, I would say. And the pandemic showed us way forward. It kind of accelerated the adoption of digital in this entire process. Many of my co-panelists talked about skilling, and as Sanjeev said, skilling cannot happen overnight. So there is bound to be some kind of disruption. Now, when we talk about job loss going forward, unlike previous revolutions, I think the present one, at least in the manufacturing sector, may have much more disruption in the workforce, and you cannot kind of make somebody who is doing a very low skill job, and due to the repetitive nature of his job which gets automated, you don't expect him to skill himself in a short time and take on some other job which is the job of the future. So there is always a time lag. So here again I come back to my question, that come back to the issue of governments need to be much more proactive. They need to be much more visionary. They need to work with the private sector. They need to work with the industry. You cannot have government working in silos, government working on their own. We need a much more integrated, collaborative and immersive process of all the pillars of the society who need to come together to ensure that we tackle this problem while we have time. Otherwise, the consequences are going to be catastrophic, as we have seen, in the past month or so. So, in providing connectivity, providing infrastructure through devices, etc., having a curriculum which does not just educates people but make them employable, and working with the industry, because it is the industry, it is the economy who is going to provide job offers. And last but not the least, awareness. In my dealing with frontier technologies and with various government departments, I've seen there is a lack of awareness of the potential of this technology. When we talk about blockchain, so what people say that, okay, today we are doing it in a ledger, manual ledger, we digitize it and we have put it on blockchain. That is not blockchain. To achieve the big potential of blockchain, we must understand what the potential is and work towards it. So governments would need to really look forward to capacity building within itself and working in NITI. I think I'm really fortunate, and also having a very, very progressive boss like Mr. Amitabh Kant, and the kind of, the private, young, old that we have in NITI. I think that is what the government needs, and government is working in that direction, where there are many experts coming through lateral entries at crucial positions, and also on any topic, say whether it is data exchange. So MeitY will set up an expert committee. So what I'm trying to say is, the challenge is there, but the challenge also provides us with the opportunity. There is a silver lining across this entire problem, and we need to seize the opportunity by being visionary, progressive, and work as a team and not in silos. That is what I feel is the bottom line.
Thank you, Anna. Sanjeev, do you want to add something?
Yes. So listen, I want to give the example of what happened to the IT industry in India. There were 5 IITs, great institutions, and they built India's brand, and they sent their graduates overseas. But really, if you look at the rank and file of the IT industry, where did the engineers come from? They came from the NITs, they came from the private engineering colleges, literally 3,000-4,000 of them, right? And that capacity was built over a decade or two, right? And what you call the IT revolution in India took 20 years. And I'm saying, if there's a demand for that education, supply will be created. Some of it in the government institutions, a lot of it private. Right? So really, it's about if you say I want it in 2 years, it's not possible. But over 20 years, yes, of course, it's possible, and it will happen. India has done it earlier. So if India has done it earlier, why can't India do it again? Okay, number one. Number two is we are already seeing. You're saying that look, there will be job losses, but you know what? There will be skill shifts. Will there be job losses on an aggregate basis? I don't know. So the number of jobs now for AI, for data analytics, for data sciences, machine learning, they've gone up on Naukri. Now the moment they go up, salaries go up. Salaries go up, people pay for courses. People pay for courses. Prices of courses go up. Supply goes up. It's a market like any other. Yes, government institutions don't respond to market forces so easily, but private institutions do. So it'll happen. It won't happen in 2 years.
You actually answered a question which one of the users or one of the viewers has put up on what to expect. Let me ask a question further down from Amir Al-Rawas. Amir, considering you come from academia, one of the things that, for example, Shubhangi Jain has asked us is how is education and teaching going to change under the 4th Industrial Revolution? Like something which Sanjeev touched on, but maybe what do you see how it's going to change?
AI and robotics will change education in a big way. Right now, we've claimed to have shifted paradigms from teaching to learning, where it's a student-centered education. That hasn't really fully happened because we still have assessments, we still have teachers in control. When you have education being delivered through robotics, for example, through AI tools, you would truly give control to the student, where the assistant will be a robot. And again, when you go home, the relationships between mothers and children are often hurt by the insistence of doing homework, the kind of dialogue that happens while preparing for school or preparing for exams and so on. That, I think, will all go because exams will be no longer required. It will turn into gamification, so that you will be striving as a student to unlock the door so that you can go to the next level. And to unlock that door, you have to solve, let's say, a Newton formula or some kind of formula to be able to go to the next level. So the motivation and the progress, we do exams which are very harsh on the students, on the professors or teachers, because I hated preparing exams, and I hated even more marking exams. Here it will be a gamification where you will be asked for a code, let's say, for example, to open a door to go to the next level. You're enjoying it, you're motivated to do it, zero impact on the parents. And not all, I have been teaching for 7 years. And when you're teaching, you struggle as a lecturer to pace the teaching to the middle student. The top student gets bored and it's too fast for the slow student. Here, with computer-assisted or robotic teaching or learning, you are going to set the pace for each individual depending on their capacity to learn and their capacity to progress. And the whole notion of exams, which is a way of measuring progress, will be replaced by some kind of gamification. I believe education will be one of the most impacted sectors, but it's going to be slower only because of regulatory measures. like with many technologies that are already here, and many countries are banning them because of regulatory measures, I'm sure a lot of the new technologies will be restricted in use because of regulatory measures. So I believe for adoption to embrace technology, we would need to address the legal framework, the regulatory framework across the world.
Thank you. Najla, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. My apologies for the technical issues.
So I want to end and ask the last question to you. On one side, we talk about degrees and this, and the other side, we talk about become job creators instead of job seekers. So we have a question from Abdullah Sharif. He says, as youngsters who would be entering the workforce in 4 to 5 years, what should they expect? What should they expect, India or globally? Like they should be entrepreneurs, correct? What do you say?
I use the word entrepreneurs loosely. I think, one of the things that I was going to say as I ended it ended my talk automatically, but what I was trying to say is that, we've been trying to basically democratize access to skills, right? I think it was Anna who said, closing the gap between the haves and the have-nots, regardless of gender, creed, socioeconomic background, and age. In fact, we've been working with kids as young as 12 years old and trying to give them that entrepreneurial experience, because honestly, in the fourth industrial revolution, not only can anybody be an entrepreneur, every one of us will need to be entrepreneurial in order to truly survive and thrive. And so that entrepreneurial skill set is absolutely necessary. And I think that, answering the question that you mentioned, what can they expect in the workforce in the next 4 to 5 years? If there's one word that kind of encompasses everything, it's change. And in order to keep up with that change, you will need to be able to basically adapt, to be able to continue to be curious, to continue to have a growth mindset, and rapidly basically learn the new technologies and the new business models that are around. What we are doing on the Shara front is, it's not just about teaching skills. I think skills is one side of it, but ultimately as a city, as a nation around the world, we also need to provide the right environment, the right enabling environment that kind of encourages experimentation, divergent thinking, and really has a high tolerance for risk and failure. I'm not sure what the culture is like in India, but here in the UAE and maybe in most of Middle Eastern countries, there's definitely a stigma attached to failure. And that's one of the first things that we needed to work on at Shara, is to really help these younger people go out there and experiment much earlier on. And like I said, university is too late. We need to be doing this as early as school, and it should be starting in the home as well. In other words, encourage constructive debate, encourage questions. It's not a unidirectional conversation, as Amar was saying. You need to give students a sense of agency. They need to be able to, you need to flip teaching on its head and make it learning, so that they are basically choosing their own interests, their own passions, and really giving them the resources to do that, and then giving them the experiential opportunities to apply what they've learned, either through internships. As Anna was saying, I think one of the key opportunities here is that we need to engage with the private sector. Ultimately, for this to work, it comes to an ecosystem where everybody is collaborating. It's not just universities that need to change or governments that need to put in the right policies. Everyone needs to come together and do their bit. So absolutely, when it comes to experiential learning, the private sector plays a big role there to give students an opportunity to solve some of the challenges that these corporates are facing through internships, through real-life projects. The other final thing that I will say, especially for, I guess, ecosystem builders like us or those in government, is that it also takes patience and perseverance. I think someone had said it before me, you cannot upskill someone overnight. And we've seen that journey. We started in 2016. And, we've graduated over 113 startups in the last 4 years. But what we've noticed, it's never a linear journey. So a lot of the students who used to come to us in the early days would attend events, would attend hackathons and competitions and workshops. It took them 2 or 3 years of trial and error of, starting a project, it not working out, starting another venture, it not working out, until they ultimately found success. And so I think it takes a lot of patience and perseverance to really keep at it and realize that it's not as simple as, one workshop or one program to just upskill everyone. I hope that answers the question, but that's been our experience. on the Shurah front.
Nazla, what an elegant way we'll have to end now because I'm getting a message, our time is up. I have a series of questions here which we probably wouldn't be able to take. I would now open the floor to Ambassador Suri to put the final words for today's session.
Thank you, PK, and a big thanks to our brilliant panelists. I think we've had a fascinating conversation. Minister Omar Al-Ulama set the tone by arguing very persuasively that how can we share our collective best practices with the less privileged? Can AI be humane and inclusive? Anna's argued very passionately that we have to get it right. We have to democratize access to resources. And we need to have an AI for all kind of approach, not just for the government to do it, but for the society working as a team. Dr. Amir, I find found your insights into the relationship between technology and business models and jobs. But then the icing on the cake really from your side was the great news for students that you think that exams are going to be obsolete and games are going to replace exams to unlock doors which will take students to the next level. And I think really that makes a lot of sense, and it's something that maybe Anna and her colleagues at Niti Aayog would delve deeper into. Najla, some fascinating insights from you into what it will take to produce 21st century skilled workers, not just in terms of the hard skills and digital fluency and coding, as you said, but in particular that spirit of entrepreneurship, that curiosity, that desire to learn more and go beyond the fold. Sanjeev's expertise, of course, with Naukri. I think his point that India is a multi-speed country, and you will have parts of India that will adapt sooner, and others will have probably more time to catch up with the fourth industrial revolution. Makes a lot of sense. And his somewhat optimistic view that what we are seeing could be not job losses, but perhaps skill shifts, with the understanding that it takes a certain amount of time for these to play out. And particularly his startling statistic that on Naukri.com, the work from home jobs have gone up by a factor of 7. Whether that's just COVID and whether that will outlast COVID is something that we will all be watching out for. PK, thank you for your initial insights into how the fourth IR arrived after the first 3 ones. And for moderating this session with great elegance. We'll be back next month for the 3rd edition of the Arabian Sea Dialogues, and we will be looking at economic and financial opportunities in the emerging markets. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant day and stay safe.